Hey everyone, and welcome back for another Star Wars project. For today's build, I'll be working on the Space Worm from Empire Strikes Back. Now, this is going to be a much larger model compared to usual, so I'm going to make sure to give it as much extra support as possible. And with that in mind, let's get started. First off, I took some wire and bent it into the general shape of the body, leaving enough on the bottom wrapped around so it can offset the weight on top. I'll be making this sculpt out of polymer clay, and that can get a little bit expensive on larger scale projects, so I'm also wrapping the wire in a bunch of aluminum foil to bulk up the main parts of the body. I'll be doing the same with the base, adding several layers to create different elevations for the asteroid. Once that was all complete, I started working with some white Sculpey, making sure to cover the entire armature. Next, I rolled up some smaller chunks of clay and applied those around the neck to build up the wrinkles. I also rolled up a little ball and cone shape to make the antenna on both sides of the head. After it was fully covered, I worked on any of the remaining gaps and got to work sculpting the details. The mouth, on the other hand, that was a little bit tricky to work with. I decided to carve out the individual spots where I would be implanting the teeth. I'm gonna wait to make the teeth until after the mouth is fully painted, so I don't have to worry about accidentally getting them covered in the wrong color. Now, I am also a complete wimp with zero endurance when it comes to sculpting. My hands started cramping up, so I decided the Space Worm looks good enough, and it's time to move on to working on the base. I began by adding a whole bunch of rings that I attached all over the ground. And with just enough finessing, those will start to look like craters on the surface of the asteroid. Aside from that, I took some crumpled aluminum foil and used it to texture the entire terrain. Now, I am a huge Star Wars nerd, and let me just start off by saying that the art direction in Empire Strikes Back is honestly some of my favorite of its entire decade. All the creature design is so clunky and just kind of off-putting, which is exactly the kind of stuff that I like to build. I made several more details around the cave entrance to make it look like it had enough depth and volume for the Space Worm to fit into. And once that was all textured to match the rest of the asteroid, it was time to start adding some color. I started off with a dark base coat and covered the entire surface of the ground. While that was drying, I applied a lighter base coat onto the Space Worm itself. To make the asteroid feel a bit more like a floating space rock, I added in a couple more iridescent and metallic highlights. space worm, it's almost complete, but it still needs a few more realistic colors. So I mixed up some green and some pink. That will work really well as this muddied up wash, and that's gonna seep deep down into all the indentations. Next, I painted the inside of the mouth, and also made sure to go back and touch up a few other areas with more saturation. Finally, I added one more layer to create a bit more contrast and add in a couple more shadows. Off camera, I sculpted and baked over 100 miniature teeth. However, I may or may not have forgotten to take them out of the oven, which made the white Sculpey turn slightly brown as I burnt them to a crisp. But this actually works perfectly because now I don't need to do any weathering or painting. I can move ahead and start anchoring them into the mouth. I took some adhesive, lined the sockets, and inserted each tooth individually. I thought it would be fun and fast, which it was not. And a couple hours later, I made the career decision never to become a space worm dentist, but after all that, this asteroid-dwelling space worm is complete. As per the usual, all that's left to do is sit back and enjoy the final result.